The night drifted by quietly, almost unnervingly so, within the grand royal mansion. Everything appeared flawless. Gleaming windows, immaculate floors, and a level of luxury most people would only ever imagine. To outsiders, Mike and Susan looked like the perfect couple, living an enviable life. But behind those elegant walls, something horrific was about to unfold. A little after midnight, a 911 call shattered the stillness. Mike, his voice trembling, reported that a masked intruder had broken into their home and attacked both him and his wife. Officers and paramedics hurried to the mansion, only to walk into a scene far different from what they expected. The interior was in chaos. Blood smeared on the floor, furniture overturned, and clear signs of a brutal fight. Yet, something about the scene felt wrong. None of the doors or windows showed signs of forced entry, and the security footage contained unexplained gaps. What began as a straightforward claim of a home invasion quickly twisted into something far more tangled. What truly unfolded that night? Who was being honest? And what secrets were buried within the walls of the royal mansion? Michael Royce and his wife Susan appeared to embody perfection, at least from the outside. Famous for their lavish lifestyle, they were often spotted dining at high-end restaurants or vacationing at luxurious destinations, projecting the image of an impeccable partnership. Their grand estate in the elite community of Naplesville, Florida, further reinforced that image, surrounded by manicured gardens, a shimmering pool, and sleek modern design throughout their home, perfectly reflected the image they projected to the world. Michael, a self-made millionaire, seemed to transform every venture into success. And Susan appeared to be the shining centerpiece of his achievements. But beneath the glittering exterior of their marriage were cracks no one could see. Before Susan came Dee Hoffman, Michael's first love. They had met as college students at the University of Florida, where Michael was already ambitiously carving out his path toward success. Their relationship grew into a marriage that spanned 25 years. Dee often spoke of Michael as gentle and reliable, a man who never so much as raised his voice, much less a hand. But his relentless drive to succeed slowly wore them down. Endless business trips and long stretches of time apart strained the marriage until it quietly ended in divorce in 2005. Not long after, Michael's life shifted again when he met Susan, a 38-year-old nurse he connected with on an online dating site. With her lively spirit and infectious enthusiasm, Susan drew Michael in almost immediately. Their fast-moving romance ended with her moving into his home, stepping into the life he had left behind. By August 2007, they were married and the mansion became the setting for their new beginning. Susan, who had stepped away from her hospice nursing career to manage the household, was known for her bold and assertive personality. She held considerable sway over Michael's choices, and her forceful nature often dictated how their lives were run. Wanting to stay closer to her, Michael even pulled back from his broader business pursuits, buying a dental clinic and reducing his travel schedule. Yet, despite these sacrifices, the strain between them only deepened. Those who knew them well noticed growing tensions, especially when it came to Susan's strained relationship with Michael's daughters. Susan's relationship with Caroline, Michael's eldest daughter, was especially strained. Conflicts intensified as Susan accused Michael of putting Caroline ahead of their marriage, while Caroline felt Susan was pushing her out of her father's life. Caroline also frequently pointed out Susan's habit of drinking heavily, though Susan rarely appeared outwardly affected. By 2015, the marriage that once seemed idyllic was clearly beginning to fracture. The breaking point arrived in 2017 when Caroline began planning her wedding. Michael, intent on giving his daughter a perfect celebration, set aside $100,000 for the event, and Susan reluctantly went along. But as the costs ballooned past $250,000, the wedding became a lightning rod for the family's underlying tensions. The escalating expenses laid bare the deep resentment between Michael and Susan, pushing their already strained marriage to its limits. She erupted in anger, hurling a phone at Michael and striking him. But in an unexpected twist, it was Susan who called the police after the incident. Whether she hoped to shape the story in her favor was unclear, but events didn't play out the way she seemed to expect. When officers arrived at the mansion, they encountered clear evidence of conflict. A broken phone on the ground, furniture knocked over, and an unmistakable strain hanging in the air. Susan, distraught and chaotic, gave a disjointed explanation of the confrontation, while Michael, shaken and tense, shared his account. The officers ultimately urged Susan to leave the home for a while to defuse the situation. 3 weeks after the wedding, Michael opened up to Caroline about what he had been enduring with Susan, revealing something alarming. He confessed that Susan had physically attacked him multiple times, and Caroline accepted his words without hesitation. At the wedding, she'd seen a faint white mark on his cheek, but hadn't questioned it. Now, Michael revealed photos of his injuries, proof of a violent episode in which Susan had attacked him with a knife. That incident had resulted in her arrest. But the lingering question remained. Was this a one-time explosion? Or just another part of a deeper hidden pattern of chaos within their marriage? Susan agreed to leave, but never actually did. Instead, she lingered, attempting to persuade Michael to give their relationship another chance. Later that evening, Michael chose to take her out to dinner, hoping to bridge the growing divide between them. The restaurant's gentle lighting, warm candle-lit glow, and the calming sound of water stood in stark contrast to the tension simmering beneath the surface. Michael had imagined a quiet night, a moment to reconnect and rediscover peace, but Susan's steely expression and cutting remarks quickly extinguished any chance of reconciliation. Their discussion spiraled into the same well-worn arguments. Her bitterness over the wedding, accusations of disloyalty, and insistence that he devote himself entirely to her. The evening collapsed. In frustration, Michael, exhausted and disheartened, threw cash on the table. And walked out, leaving Susan sitting alone, staring ahead as she replayed their argument over and over. Trying to reclaim control of the moment, she sent him a sharp message. "Good luck with your daughter. I'm filing for divorce." Moments later came another, "You have serious issues with your daughter. I will not tolerate this behavior." Returning to the guest room of their mansion, she sat with the weight of the night pressing down on her. A little after midnight, Michael showed up at the door. His expression was twisted with anger and anguish. Their argument flared back to life, escalating more violently than ever. Then Susan felt a sudden burning pain in her abdomen and realized, horrified, that Michael had a knife in his hand. Panic surged through her as he struck again, blood running down her arm. The conflict had crossed the line. This was no longer an argument, but a desperate battle to stay alive. Even wounded, Susan's instinct to survive pushed her forward. Through gritted teeth and rising fear, she whispered an attempt to calm him. "Fine. I won't file for divorce. I won't leave you." Her words made him pause. His hold on the knife loosened, and the frenzy in his eyes dimmed for a moment, revealing a fleeting shadow of the man she once loved. In that instant, everything seemed to shift. But for Susan, it only confirmed how tragically their marriage had come undone. After the harrowing encounter, Michael seemed to spiral into panic. He quickly concealed the knife, grabbed a few belongings, and began spinning a new tale. It was a stranger, he told Susan, his voice trembling yet insistently firm. "Someone in a mask. Just say that and everything will be fine." Exhausted and frightened, Susan nodded, feeling she had no other option at that moment. But once she reached the hospital, she could no longer remain silent. As doctors tended to her injuries, she recounted her version of events to anyone who would listen. Nurses, investigators, anyone within earshot. The following hours became a whirlwind of police interviews, urgent phone calls, and tense exchanges in hospital corridors. Meanwhile, Michael worked to control the narrative, steadfastly repeating the story of a masked intruder and even erasing segments of the security footage, hoping it would wipe away any trace of the truth. When police returned to the mansion, they quickly spotted flaws in Michael's account. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken locks, no smashed windows. The contradictions piled up, but Michael, ever quick thinking, adapted on the fly. Maybe the doors were unlocked, he suggested. Someone could have slipped in while we were asleep. His calm, assured tone almost made the story seem plausible. But investigators soon obtained security footage from the restaurant where Michael and Susan had dined earlier that evening. The video revealed them leaving separately, visibly upset, and returning home without speaking. A stark contrast to Michael's version. Suspicion deepened, and the case took a dramatic turn when Michael was arrested. His first call went to his daughter, Caroline. His voice was steady yet Urgent. Caroline, I didn't do anything. He pleaded. Call my lawyer. Get me out of here. Caroline, his most loyal supporter, was suddenly caught in an agonizing dilemma. How could she reconcile the father she adored with the man accused of such a dark and terrifying act? News of Michael's arrest spread like wildfire, rattling his social circles and leaving acquaintances in shock. His ex-wife of 25 years, was stunned. Michael was always gentle, always kind. She said, I can't believe he could do something like this. Friends described him as level-headed and rational, even under pressure. Yet, the prosecution presented a far harsher reality, portraying a man very different from the one they thought they knew. A man used to control who, according to the prosecution, fell apart at the mere thought of losing it. They argued that Michael's fear of divorce and the potential financial fallout drove him to a calculated, reckless act. Susan's possible claim to half of his assets, they contended, pushed him to the edge, culminating in the violent confrontation. Meanwhile, Michael's defense team sought to portray the incident as a tragic accident. They insisted that the couple's story about an intruder had been invented in a moment of panic and argued that Michael never intended to harm Susan. At his first court appearance in February, Michael presented his account. He acknowledged the argument at the restaurant and the escalating tension at home, but maintained that later that night, he had gone to the guest room to reconcile with Susan, only to find her in distress holding a knife. Michael recounted a struggle to take the knife from Susan, claiming it grazed her abdomen accidentally and was never meant as an attack. Yet, his story was riddled with inconsistencies. He even alleged that after the incident, the couple calmly sat on the bed discussing travel plans and their future as if nothing had occurred. The notion of chatting about vacations while one was bleeding from serious injuries strained all credibility. Investigators uncovered even more damning evidence. Blood was not only on the bed, but smeared across walls, the floor, and even the bathroom mirror. These harrowing details painted a far more violent and sinister picture than Michael's version of an accidental struggle. As the trial progressed, it became evident that his carefully constructed narrative was unraveling. The calm, composed persona Michael had carefully cultivated over the years was unraveling, revealing a far darker side. The truth of that night remained mired in conflicting accounts. But one thing was undeniable. Michael's life would never be the same. With each new revelation, tension in the courtroom mounted, signaling that the story was far more complex than it first appeared. During his testimony, Michael recounted a shocking moment from that night. He said their dog had jumped onto the bed, momentarily distracting him, allowing Susan to seize the knife again and cut her wrists. According to Michael, she was sobbing, terrified of going to jail, and unsure of what to do. The claim was dramatic and chilling, adding yet another layer to the night's chaos. As the trial wore on, distinguishing truth from deception became increasingly difficult. anticipating that the police would eventually uncover pieces of the real story. Michael claimed he had turned off the security cameras to protect himself from false accusations. Moments later, he called emergency services, spinning the tale of a masked intruder. Yet, the fragile narrative he had constructed quickly began to unravel. Under scrutiny, investigators managed to recover partial surveillance footage from the mansion, despite Michael's attempts to erase it. The clips revealed a tense and strained atmosphere between Michael and Susan in the hours before the attack, casting serious doubt on his version of events. Medical experts further undermined his account, confirming that Susan's injuries were deliberate and precise, indicative of a purposeful attack rather than an accidental struggle. In court, the defense depicted Michael as a man trapped in a toxic marriage. They introduced evidence of Susan's alleged aggression, including prior arrests for violent behavior and threatening messages she had sent him. One such text read, "You'll regret the day you crossed me." They also pointed to posts Michael had made on online forums, describing his marriage as a constant battleground. In these posts, he complained of relentless accusations of infidelity and Susan's demands that he cut ties with his daughter, Caroline. The defense sought to portray Susan as unstable, suggesting her erratic behavior and potential self-harm could have driven her to stage the attack, but Susan's attorneys pushed back with pointed questions. If Michael truly feared for his safety, why hadn't he left the relationship? Why keep up the illusion of a happy marriage? And most crucially, why invent the story of a masked intruder? The trial reached a turning point when Michael's attorneys called a forensic expert to examine the blood spatter evidence. The expert testified that the pattern suggested Susan's injuries occurred closer to 3 a.m., seemingly supporting Michael's claim that they happened just before paramedics arrived. Susan, however, maintained that the attack took place around midnight while she was asleep and that Michael had struck first. Medical testimony confirmed that her injuries were life-threatening and could have led to fatal blood loss within an hour without immediate care. Michael's defense argued this supported his account, claiming Susan survived because he had called for help promptly. Yet, the defense began to crumble when the reliability of their forensic expert came under serious questioning. It came to light that the forensic expert had a deeply troubling history. His license had been suspended for ethical violations and he had been connected to a horrific case involving the theft of organs from deceased individuals. Police had found a chilling collection of hearts, brains, and other organs stored in his refrigerator. This revelation severely undermined his credibility and dealt a major blow to Michael's defense. Seizing the opportunity, Susan's lawyers argued that the blood evidence indicated intentional violence rather than self-inflicted wounds. They claimed Michael had restrained Susan during the attack, preventing her from defending herself. In court, Susan even demonstrated how she believed Michael had manipulated the scene, placing the knife in her hand to stage the incident, and then inflicting superficial injuries. on himself to support the intruder. Story. As the trial unfolded, the courtroom became a clash of competing narratives. Susan's attorneys depicted her as a survivor of calculated domestic abuse, while Michael's defense painted him as a desperate man ensnared in a toxic marriage. Yet, as the investigation deepened, darker truths about Michael's life began to emerge. Evidence revealed that he had been emotionally detached from the marriage for years, despite his claims of trying to repair it. Further scrutiny uncovered records showing Michael had registered on multiple dating sites, seeking connections with younger women and quietly planning a future without Susan. Susan's legal team seized on this evidence, arguing that Michael had been dishonest from the beginning. They suggested that the attack could have been premeditated, a deliberate effort to remove Susan from his life without facing the financial consequences of a divorce. Prosecutors argued that Michael's actions, from deleting security footage to fabricating the intruder story, were calculated moves to construct an alibi and evade both legal and financial repercussions. The trial captivated the nation, becoming one of the most widely discussed cases in recent memory. Jurors listened intently, their faces impassive as testimony poured in from lawyers, witnesses, and forensic experts. Every statement was dissected, every detail weighed. When it came time to deliver a verdict, the jury took just 4 hours. Michael Roy Shaw, a 63-year-old businessman once celebrated for his success and composure, was convicted on multiple counts, including attempted manslaughter, evidence tampering, withholding medical care, and witness intimidation. The sentence was both swift and severe. In December 2019, Michael was sentenced to 30 years in prison without the possibility of parole. It seemed like the final chapter of a dark saga. Yet, the story didn't entirely conclude. Rumors circulated that even behind bars, Michael wasn't willing to let go. Allegedly, he attempted to enlist someone to harm Susan, a chilling suggestion that he might have been scheming against her from his prison cell. Although these claims sparked public outrage and prompted a police investigation, there was insufficient evidence to press new charges. Still, the whispers of his lingering malice further damaged Michael's already notorious reputation. Meanwhile, Susan focused on rebuilding her life. She quietly filed for divorce following Michael's arrest and steered clear of media attention, giving no interviews or public statements. Determined to move forward on her own terms. But one matter remained unresolved. Their mansion, once a symbol of love and later the scene of their nightmare, had become the focal point of a bitter legal battle. For Susan, the fight over the house wasn't merely about finances. It was about reclaiming her independence and leaving the horrors of her past behind. She was determined to secure her rightful share, while Michael, even from prison, maneuvered through his attorneys to block her efforts at every turn. In the end, Susan won her claim to the property. Yet, the victory carried a heavy price. The mansion, with its gleaming floors and Luxurious interiors still bore the marks of that fateful night. It stood as a constant reminder of her suffering. The blood she had shed, the fear she had endured, and the betrayal that had upended her life. Was it a happy ending for Susan? Not completely. She had survived and won her legal battles, but the price she paid was immense. Her life would never be the same. What began as a tense dinner conversation had escalated into a bloody ordeal, ending with her husband behind bars, and a long, difficult journey toward healing. As for Michael, the man who once basked in wealth, influence, and admiration, he now spends his days confined to a stark prison cell, deprived of his fortune, his control, and the respect he once commanded. If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We post crime case videos every night. Until next time, stay sharp, stay vigilant.